Hi. I think everybody's in. There you go. We can get started. Everybody got some food and drinks. We have some pizza coming as well. Hopefully there will be enough for everybody. All right, so we'll be talking about how to crack the coding interview. It's a very good time of the year to do that, I guess. A lot of you are going for either co-ops or full-time jobs interviews after starting end of January. And so I'm Marcelo. Why can I talk about how to crack the coding interview? I have been doing interviews for a long time, since 2002, for many different companies. Started at Bell in Canada, Nikon, Google, Square. I worked there for 4 years, did a lot of interviews. And finally now for Indigo Fair, the company that I founded about a year ago. And I also have interviewed on a lot of other companies, not only the ones I worked for. So I have a pretty good idea of how small companies, big companies, startups interview. And my main goal here is to help you guys prepare. Like it's a lot of it's being prepared and knowing what to expect. And that's what I want to help you guys, at least with a little bit more information. So, interview types, right? Coding, that's the one we're going to be focusing on, where you're going to either on a whiteboard or on the phone or somewhat talk through code, really explain how to build something, or show how to write some code to solve a problem. There's algorithms interviews as well. Google is very famous for those. Those are mainly like you're not going to write code, but you're going to talk through. You're going to have, they're usually harder problems that you wouldn't have enough time in an hour to actually write the code, but you spend like 45 minutes to an hour talking through how to solve a complex problem, what algorithms you could use, possible different solutions, and so on. System design is another very common interview, especially at bigger companies like Google. They are not as important for new grads or co-ops, even though they will still do those interviews, but it's mainly like talking like, how would you build the backend for Gmail or something like that, explaining the distributed system, how things would services talk to each other. And again, this is not what we're going to cover here. And finally, there's the selling interview, which is like where everybody wants to get you. Usually you're going for a full day of interviews. They're going to do 3, 4, 5 interviews. If you did well, very likely you're going to meet with somebody who's going to try to sell you. They're going to be like telling you why you want to join their company, why you don't want to go anywhere else. So again, always look forward to the last interview being a selling interview. That's a very good indication that you did very well during the day. So I'll very quickly run through the environments. Can you guys see well at the end? It's a little small, but like, so phone interview, there will be screening interviews over the phone. I don't know, you guys might have done some of this already. Companies like, especially Google, Facebook, they will do coding over the phone, which really sucks. It's like, yes, how do you solve this problem? Can you describe it to me? Would you use a hash map? Would you use a dictionary? It's hard. We're not used to doing this type of stuff. Sometimes, a lot of the times, the person who is interviewing you over the phone is also not like an engineer. Sometimes it's like a recruiter or just a screener, somebody who just wants to make sure they should spend the money to bring you on site. It's hard. You have to prepare. Practice. Try to do it. Try to think how you would do that over the phone. It's not the most convenient way. Video conference is a very common way of doing screening as well. We did that a lot at Square. You use a lot of, usually use a tool like CoderPad where you can actually write code and run code and you pick your language. It's a very decent way to actually do screening. You get a pretty good way of verifying that people actually can do what they're supposed to do. And again, the main goal here is, should we pay for a plane ticket for this person to come on site and like do the full interview? On-site with remote interview, some companies will do that. It happened a lot at Square as well. I really dislike this type of interview. It's like they will bring you on site, you'll have a full day of interviews, but sometimes the interviewer is not going to be there, he's going to be remote, and they're going to put you in a room, connect you with video conference, and you're going to do the same type of video conference interview with somebody that's not on site. It's like, I never really liked that, especially because you made all the effort to go to the company and you're like doing a remote interview. But be prepared, it happens. And then finally, the one that I'm going to concentrate most of the time here, I'm sorry, not this one. On-site on the whiteboard. Again, very typical for companies like Google. I have done a lot of these interviews in the past. It's not the greatest format. The people like you guys that are looking for a software engineering position, a programmer position, you're not used to writing code on the whiteboard. You really need to, like, if you want to do well on this type of interview, you have to practice. You have to, like, go through problems, write solutions on the whiteboard. It's hard to, like, you can't compile the code. Do you have to worry about, like, syntax? Do you worry about naming variables because it's much harder to write on the whiteboard? You're not really, like, evaluate. The goal of an interview is to evaluate, like, how well does this person behave on their computer, on their environment with the programming language that they're familiar with. And the whiteboard interview doesn't really cut for that. It's more like, let's throw a problem at this person, like, see them struggle writing it on the whiteboard, trying to come up with a solution. And finally, the on-site pairing interview, which is my favorite. Again, at Square, that's the main way we interview people. At Indigo Fair, that's exactly how we do it. The main goal of this interview is, like, you are going to sit with the person and you will spend time, program together, try to solve a problem together, and in the end, make a decision like, is this person right to join the company or not? You really get to see everything. You see the person. Hopefully, if you bring your own laptop, you're going to see the person working on their own computer, their own environment, their own language, their own tools, and you get a much, much better feeling for, like, how much that person knows about what they're doing. Now, just very quickly, it's very important that you guys understand the point of view of the interviewer as well. Like, if you think about it, the person that's going to interview you, they're very busy. If they're hiring, that means they don't have enough people to do the work. They have a lot of coding to do, and they have to stop. They're like in the middle of the day, it's like, oh, there's an interview now. I have to stop working, coding, stop solving my issues here to go talk to somebody. It's not like, a lot of the times, if they're not experienced as interviewers, they're not going to, like, get there in the best mood ever because they just stopped doing something, solving a problem to go interview you. Usually they're going to get over it, but that's just for you guys to, like, when you get there, the person doesn't look like they are super nice or ready to interview you. Try to understand that. But the main thing is this: they're not there to fail you. They're not there to like give you a challenge that you're not going to solve. They're there to try to get a sense for how good do you do your job. Like how much can you add to the team. They want you to pass. They want more people in their team so that they are not overwhelmed by their work. So keep that in mind because it's important. Like, it's not the pressure is not only on the person being interviewed. The interviewer also has some pressure there, and he wants you there. And the most important thing is, if you're an interviewer that's doing like 5 to 10 interviews a week, you want to enjoy. You don't want that to be a thing that you go in and the person, you're not communicating properly, you're not understanding each other, you're not making progress. You want to have a good time. So keep that in mind. Like, you be nice, communicate, talk, try to enjoy, try to learn something. A lot of the times you're going to teach something new to the person, especially if you're working on your own environment, your own tools, your own language. I have learned a lot of language by interviewing people like that I never used before. They're like, oh, I'm going to use Python for the interview. I'm like, fine, you're going to have to teach me some things here because I never worked in Python before. And you should have a good time. Like, again, in the end, the most important thing is at the end of the interviewer must answer one very important question. Right? Do I want this person on my team? And it should be just like that. The result of an interview, of 45 minutes to an hour interview, from the interviewer point of view should be, do I want this person on my team? And it's very binary. If they're anywhere in the middle, if the answer is like, I'm not sure, maybe, they failed at the interview. The interviewer really didn't do a good job. You should discount that interview and get results of interviews where there was a very binary, a very clear, hire this person, I want to work with them, or do not hire this person, they shouldn't be on our team. I think one of the results that I most dislike on interviews is when they come back and they say, this person maybe should be hired, but not on my team. That's like, okay, so you don't want to work with them, but they might be good for somebody else. It really, really sucks. So your job as being interviewed is to get this person to say yes to that. So again, communicate, show what you know, be nice, ask questions, and I'll talk a little bit about these things here. What are they looking for? Can you communicate your ideas? Do you clearly understand what you're talking about? Do you have interesting questions? Are you passing your ideas properly? How well do you know the programming language? It's really, really sad when you start an interview and the person really struggle with basics of the language, like if they pick C++ and they don't know how to iterate over an array. They have to look it up. We are totally fine with people opening up the web, going to Stack Overflow, searching for things, but the basics of the language you should be very familiar with. If you're not, it's a very, very negative sign there. Are you coachable? This is also a very important thing, especially during an interview. It's fine that you're not going to know everything, but how well do you listen to hints? If I point you in a direction, are you going to follow through with it? Do you understand the hints? Do you capture it and you follow through and you change what you're doing, or you listen to it even if you don't agree with it, you acknowledge it? So basically, if I hire you and I put you on my team, even if you're not the best person to write algorithms at this point, are you going to be able to learn it? How familiar and efficient are you with your tools? Especially when you are working on your own environment, you have your own computer, your own programming language, your own IDE, or whatever you use. Are you efficient with it, or do you struggle? Do you know your shortcuts? Do you spend most of your time writing code, or do you spend a lot of time fighting with the tools and the IDE or anything else? That's a very big tell as well, of especially how much people have programming in their life. People that have spent a lot of time programming, you guys spent 4 or 5 years at university, you should be doing this very well at the end, especially. Do you know algorithms? The interview is not just about getting the algorithm right, but there will be a part of it where there will be many discussions about algorithms. Can you talk about them? Do you recognize the algorithms? Do you can you argue about what algorithm is better than the other and why? And then, again, can you code? A lot of people who do very well on algorithms, they're going to kill it. They're oh, they get to the best solution in 5 minutes, and you're blown away. And then they get to the coding part, and they have to write 2 for loops, and they struggle. They can't follow through with it, or they have to write a simple recursion, and they haven't done it enough. They won't be able to do it on the spot. They get confused. They start getting lost, and the interview goes sideways, and it's very hard to bring them back. It's the same with data structures. A lot of the people, they will get to very good algorithms. They're oh, we should build a tree. But then when they build the tree, they don't use the proper data structures. They build a tree that's very inefficient, that's not looking things up on a hash map. Instead, it's like doing a search on an array for any of the children and things like that. So again, and these are things that you only get with practice, but you have to, especially on these last two, be very well prepared when you get to the interview. And then finally, this is very important. Like, don't think that when you get to a coding interview, the most important thing is to get to a solution to the problem. That's completely the wrong way of looking at it. Again, if you remember that the questions that the interviewer is trying to answer is, do I want this person on the team? It's not about solving the problem. It's about the whole process. Like, you need a strategy. Does this person think through the solution before they start coding? Do they understand what they're doing? Do they have a good testing framework? Do they have a very good understanding of the problem? Is the code readable? Like, I've seen very smart people write code that's like amazing. It's very efficient. It solves the problem, but nobody else can read that code. Like, do I want that person on my team? Very unlikely. So you have to care about everything. So very quickly, talk through the code interview structure. Again, for most of the companies, it's usually 45 minutes to 60 minutes. The issue here is that the 60 minutes is like, if an engineer is interviewing you, he has 60 minutes in his calendar to do this, and he might have stuff before and after. It's very important that you are there, ready and set to go at 0-0. You should not waste any time of the interview, like setting up your environment, getting your computer, like your computer is out of battery, your ID is not ready, you take a long time to start a program from scratch. Be ready. Like, it might happen that the interviewer is going to be late or not be ready, but you should be. You should spend like 2 minutes getting to know the interviewer. His job, if he's a very good interviewer, is to calm you down. People are usually nervous. Talk to you a little bit, do some chit chat, get to know you very quickly, and get you set up and familiar with the environment, and get started on the interview as fast as possible, so that you have the best chance of succeeding. So the next 3 minutes, you should be describing the problem. It's going to tell you, like, hey, this is what we're going to solve. Here's the description. Do you have any questions? You're going to ask a couple of questions. You should always ask a couple of questions to make sure you completely understand what the problem is. And then discuss the algorithm and possible solutions. Again, this is very important. This is where you start to show what you know. Don't be shy. Get up, especially if you're doing like it on the computer. Get up, go to the whiteboard, draw, communicate very well. Make sure you understand the problem. That's like one of the biggest mistakes people make. They spend 20 minutes, they're arguing on how to solve a problem that's a different problem than what was asked. Or they didn't completely understand the problem. Make sure, like, this is where, like, when you discuss the algorithm, explain how you're going to solve it. Do not start writing code right away. Please never do that. That's the worst indication that you can see. Somebody who, before they even thought about the problem and know exactly how to solve it, starts writing code. And then, if this part went well, you got to an algorithm, then you're going to have about 40 minutes to actually write the code for it, which should be more than plenty. A lot of the best candidates might finish this part in like 10-15 minutes, and then the interview turns from a coding interview into a selling interview. It's like you stopped, you're convinced that person should join your team, you're going to spend the last 20 minutes convincing them that they should join your company. Again, if you find yourself in that situation, you know you're doing very well. And it's usually very common for all of the big companies and smaller companies to leave 5 minutes in the end to let people ask questions. This is your time to like get to know if you want to join this company. How does the team work? What are the projects you're going to be working on? What language do they program in? How flexible things are? How much do you participate in product decisions? Anything you would like to know. There are some things that you shouldn't be asking. I'm going to talk about it later. So very quickly, I want to just go through like a simple interview problem. and we'll talk about each step of it and how to approach it. And if you apply like this type of structure to any interview that you go to, you're going to do well. Like you don't need to solve the algorithm. You don't need to come up with the best possible solution ever. You follow this. You follow the steps. You plan for it. You come up with a strategy. You are going to do well in your interviews, even if for whatever reason you didn't get to the best possible solution or algorithm. So this is a problem we're going to work through. Like, given a list of words, find the maximum common prefix between any two words in the input list. Again, first thing, this would be the first 2 minutes of the interview. I would tell you guys, this is what we're going to do. I would give you an example to make sure you understand this. Sorry. So, the problem is, given a list of words, find the maximum possible prefix between any two words of the list. So, in this case here, given this input, the prefix electric-R is the largest one. It has 6 letters, which is the prefix of electricity and electronics. So, if I showed you guys this problem, what questions would you ask? Like, the problem is pretty clear, right? You understand what we're trying to solve here. So, but I would still expect people to ask questions to clarify. There are things you should know, like, or you should clarify.
What's the output for an empty list?
Exactly, that's a good one. What's the output for an empty list? Or is an empty list a valid input? The answer would be the output of an empty list is empty, or it's an empty string. Or I could say you should throw an exception, that's not valid input. But it's good that you ask, right? These are type of good clarifying questions. Anything else?
What if there's a tie?
What if there's a tie? Perfect. There are many ways of looking at it, right? They can say, then the first one wins, or whichever is fine. But it's very good that you notice that could be, that's something that could happen, and you have to identify it. Anybody else?
Do you count spaces?
Exactly. What's the space, right? That's the question. So what's the alphabet? Other questions here are like, what's the alphabet? Is it ASCII? Is it lowercase alphabet letters, A to Z? Usually, especially in companies like Google, I would do the same. Any question like that the answer is always the alphabet is Unicode, and so I just list some of these questions here. Exactly, what if there is a tie? What do we expect the average string length to be large? Do we expect the input to be very large? Is null or empty input expected? These are questions that show the interviewer that not only you understand the problem, but you think through the consequences of everything. You are aware of these scenarios, and you need proper answers to these questions in order to plan for your algorithm. So yeah, always try to ask questions. You don't need to come up with all the questions, but it's important that you show that you care what happens in this case, for example, when it's a null or empty string. Now, the algorithm. Very, very often, there is a very easy brute force solution, right? In this case, so in this case, we can always compare each word to each other word, keeping track of the largest prefix we found so far, and that's the answer. It's easy to write. It's like 2 for loops, one inside the other, keeping track of the maximum prefix we found so far. Is that good enough? Usually not. Usually you should mention there is a brute force solution. Here's what it is. You show that you know it, but the next step should be, okay, how can we do better? The answer to can we do better is always like, yes, you can do better. And again, now it's like, how do you get good at it? There is no formula, right? I can't teach you how to become good at algorithms. You have to practice. It is very clear that you have to do a lot. Like, go to Top Coder, for example, practice Arena, do a bunch of the easy problems there, You do not need to, like, if you're going to prepare for interviews, that's a very good resource. You do not need to, like, destroy all of the problems they have. If you become very good at most of the easy problems there, and you can do that in half an hour to 45 minutes, you're going to do well in any interview. Again, you have to remember, usually you have 40 minutes to code. There is no way for the interview problem to be very complex. It's that simple. Like, if you have to write more than like 40 lines of code, you're writing too much code, most likely. It's very unlikely that any solution to a problem like this is going to take more than like 20 to 40 lines of code with a testing framework, with tests, and the solution. So, but things that can help you get to an algorithm, and you should ask yourself this: if you're stuck, ask the interviewer. Like, does sorting the inputs help? In this case, it is a possibility. You can sort the input, and you can compare the word only with the next words, and you are very likely going to find a solution. Is it the fastest solution possible? No. Do I care if I'm interviewing you that you're not getting to the fastest solution or the best algorithm? I don't. Like, if you tell me I'm going to sort this list and I'm going to compare every word to each other, and you can tell me what the complexity is of that, I'll be like, okay, let's code it. Now you can come up with an algorithm. I want to see how you code. Let's see the next step. How do you structure? How do you approach the problem? And how do you structure your code? And that's, again, one of the most important things. If you do all those steps properly, which we're going to get to next year, even if you don't solve the problem, you're going to do reasonably well on your interview. First thing, like, this is very common that people like forget about this. They start coding and, like, especially, like, they want to see results. They start printing results to the console on whatever environment they have, and they forget that the problem is very clearly asking you to build something like this. It wants a method. There is a very clear input to the method. There is a very clear output. This is like, you build this. It's a black box. You can test this. You can validate some examples through this. So you should always write this. Do not, like, write a method that prints out the result for a random input. That's like a third of solving a problem like this. So first thing, after you start, now it's time to start coding, right? You discussed on the whiteboard an algorithm. You came up with a reasonable solution. We're gonna be like, okay, let's see how you code this. Define your method, what it looks like we did before in the slide before. This is what we are going to write. Write this time is probably the most valuable time you're going to spend on your interview. A lot of people might think that they're wasting time here, but if you do this is like 7 lines of code, 8 lines of code. You have a testing framework that you can test any example that the interviewer gives you. Very likely, you're going to solve the example that the interviewer gives you. And then he's going to be like, okay, what if the input changed to this? Because he knows you didn't catch all the problems or you didn't solve everything. And if you don't have something like this, now you're changing just the input. You're typing new words there, and you might need to change your code. And then what do you do? Like, do you know that the change you make, even if it works for the new input, does it work for the old input? So what do? You have to, like, be typing back and forth. So building a very simple method that lets you test, gives it the input and tells it what the expected output is, validates it, is super important. Do not skip this. And it shows that you care about what you're building. You build things properly. You think through it before you start. And then the next thing is this, right? You just use the method that you create to validate things with some examples. This shows that you understood the problem. Shows that you're starting to think through some different test case, and it's, again, another 6 lines of code that's going to help you a lot. Not only implementing the full algorithm, but testing it at the end, which you're going to have to do. Like, you finish the algorithm. I'm going to ask you, okay, how do you test this? What test case would you come up with that would validate that the code that you wrote actually works for every possible input. And you're going to have to do it at the end, so it's much better to start with this. You guys, I don't know how many of you are using a laptop, but like the full source code that I'm going to go through here very quickly is available on this document if you guys want to open it. It's pretty simple, but I wrote 3 possible solutions for this problem that I just very quickly want to show to you guys. So again, the very first one is the brute force solution, right? This is basically how much code is needed for the total of lines of code that you need for the brute code in Java is 20 lines of code. You're looping through both arrays. You're finding the maximum prefix for every combination of 2 words in the array, and keeping track of the maximum possible length. We need a helper method here that gives the largest prefix between 2 given words, which is used here. And that's it. The problem is solved. Like, if you're not getting anywhere with the algorithm part, if you're like, I don't know how to come up with a better solution, I know how to do the brute force. If you do everything properly, you write the validation, you write tests, you write this code properly, and you show that you can do this, even though it's not the most efficient solution, chances that you're going to pass the interview are pretty high. The result might not be hire this guy right away, but it might be. That's what might get you to the next interview. It might be he didn't come up with an algorithm, but he showed that he knows how to code. He has a very good structure. He planned for it. He wrote test case. I would want somebody writing code like this on my team, right? So get him more interviews. Let's try to get him to pass instead of like just rejecting right away. For reference, this is just the code that will compare 2 strings. Very straightforward. Now another solution to, so again, going back to what I was talking about, how do you figure out how do you come up with an algorithm? And one of the questions there was, what data structures can I use here to help me? There aren't that many data structures, right? Like, you can use trees, you can use dictionaries, you can use arrays. There isn't much outside of it. So like, think through those. This problem can be solved with a hash map. It's not the most efficient memory-wise. Like, you're going to have to create a very large hash map to make it very efficient, but you can do it, right? What you do is, for every word, you compute, for every possible prefix of every word, you add it to a dictionary or hash map, and you add counts of how many times you saw that prefix. And every time that a prefix has more than 1, if it's the largest that you have seen so far, you store that prefix as being your largest one. You're going to go through the list only once. You're going to build a very large dictionary that's going to use more memory than you should be using, but it's going to be very efficient. It's a much better solution than the brute force solution. Exactly 20 lines of code in Java to code it as well, and you already did much, much better, even though it's not the most efficient solution. And so most of the solutions here, you keep track of your max prefix, you build a dictionary of all possible prefixes that are there, pointing to an integer with how many times you have seen it, and then you iterate through each word, and then for each word, you keep track of a prefix, and if the count's not there, you just add as 1. If it's there already, you increment the count, and then you can check, because you're sure this prefix exists twice. If the prefix is already there, and it's bigger than the current maximum that you have, you store the maximum, and that's it, you're done. And then the final solution that I want to use as an example is the most efficient one. Hint for you guys here, anytime you see any problems with strings and prefixes, a try is probably your best bet. A lot of people are usually scared of implementing a tree in an interview. It's like, oh my god, especially more senior people that haven't been at school for a while, they have 10 years of experience. It's like, what, I'm going to have to build a tree? It's not that scary. It's like, It's a dictionary of dictionaries. It's like you should, as a graduated from University of Waterloo, I would expect you to be able to do this any time of the week, during an interview especially, right? So make sure you can do things like that, and that you're not following a recipe. It's not like a lot of people are like, oh, I have to build a try. There's only one way to do it. That's not true. For different applications, there are different ways to build it. You just have to think a little bit to figure out what's the best way to do it. But again, what do we do using a tree? The basic algorithm is for every word that is in your input, you're adding it to a tree. Every time you add to a tree, you add letter by letter to a tree. As you're going down the tree, you know that the letters that you're adding are already in the tree. So you know that as long as you're still, the letters are still there, that is a matching prefix to something else. All you have to do is like keep track of what that prefix is. If it's the maximum that you have found so far, you keep track of it. So again, keep track of your max prefix, build a simple tree. The tree node here is just like, it's a class that all it has is a dictionary inside that maps characters to count of how many times they have been seen. You just go down the tree for each word. You start at the root, and you keep going down the tree, keeping track whether it has matched every letter so far, so that you know that you're in a matching prefix. And eventually, I just put the code here in another slide. So for each letter, you're going to like put the letter in the tree. If it's already there, you check, again, keep checking whether it's a maximum prefix. If it is, store it. If any letter doesn't match, you stop matching and you just add that word to the tree as is. And basically that's it. This is the most efficient code possible. And we wrote that in like 25 lines of code. Yes? The hash map solution is 20 lines of code. This one is 25, 27. The brute force solution with the helper function together is about 20 lines of code. The operation of the try is here. This is the operation on the try here. This is your current node. It has a dictionary that's a list of children. You're just putting the letter there if it's not there. And here you're getting it if it's there. So basically you try to get it. If it's there, so the child does not know there's a child for that character, you're just going to keep going down and matching your prefix. If it's not there, you're going to add it. This is the try. It's 2 lines of code here. Yes, go ahead.
So what if at the point you know that you're going to use a try, but then you're like, I don't know how to implement a try on the side, right?
So again, it's not a problem that you don't know. Like, you don't need to know, right? And like, you say try, but like, again, if you look at the code itself, you need to know your data structures. It's a map. You can do that with a map of maps, right? It's a map that points to, for each letter, or for each possible letter that you find, points to another map. That's the try in this case. You don't know how to do it, that's fine. Like, you do not need to know how to build a try. The interviewer might help you. If you're having a conversation, you're discussing possible solutions, you're like, I'm not sure how to do a try. Does this look right? He's going to, especially if you're having a good time and like you're showing like interest and like you're engaged in the interview, they are going to help you. They're not going to be like your problem. And especially for this type of things like a try, do not go to Google and type like how do I do a try in whatever language you want. The interviewer might let you do it, but at that point he's going to be like, if this guy is copying like how to build a dictionary, how to use a data structure from the internet, it's not a very good indication. Right? It's fine to search for concepts. It's fine to search for like how do you find a substring in JavaScript. It's fine. Like, I don't always remember these things by heart. I have to go look it up. It's completely fine to do these things during the interview, but do not try to look for a solution to the problem on the internet. It's not going to be great. But it's fine not to know. Again, you show that like you have a good process, you write tasks, you understand the problem, and you're trying to get to a solution. the person is going to help you enough to like get to the solution. So get to the end of the interview, you got to a solution or not, no matter what, any reasonable company is going to make sure that you have some time in the end to ask questions to the interviewer. I put some examples here of things that you shouldn't ask. Like, remember that the person that's interviewing you, they are an employee of the company, they are a software engineer there. Do not ask about salary, he's not the person who decides that. You should talk to that with the recruiter or some HR person at the end. Do not talk about the problem. It's like, either you did very well and you know that already, or you didn't do very well and like, what do you expect the person to tell you? Like, you really didn't do well, like there is many other ways to solve this problem. It's not, that doesn't matter at that point anymore. What matters is, do you care about the company? Like, ask questions about the job, like ask questions about the team, what tools do they use, how big are the teams, do they have separate teams for like app development, whatever you want to know about the job, like whatever you care about enough in the company to this sucks. So whatever you care about the job, that will help you make a decision whether you want to join this company or not if they gave you an offer. So just run through some final thoughts here. Again, practice a lot, be prepared. If you know that you're going to interview for a company that will do like whiteboard interviews, practice that. Like, you are not going to get there and like do well if you never did it before, right? Solve problems on the whiteboard. It's hard to be calm, but try to be calm, and the more you practice, the more prepared you are, you're gonna get there and like feel comfortable doing, you know what to do, right? Like if you know your next step, you know what you're gonna do next, you know what type of questions to answer, even if like things are not going 100%, you're going to perform much better than otherwise. Again, arrive early, have everything ready. Nothing is worse than you start an interview, you have exactly 1 hour, the person is not ready, the computer is not working, the environment is not set up, they don't know how to start a new project from scratch. Be prepared on that sense. Do not waste any time of the interview, because if you think about the timeline of the interview, remember you had about 40 minutes to code. Any time you waste here in the beginning of the interview is going to take away from the time you could be working on your solution. Most likely, the interviewer is not going to let you go through or keep going after an hour because he has other commitments. Communicate a lot. Like it's really, really sad when you're doing an interview and the person is not talking at all. It's like they start coding and they're just coding, and I have to be probing, like, so why are you doing that? Why are you doing? Communicate. Say like, okay, so I'm going to try to build a try here. I think we need a class for the try. Maybe I need some public methods, maybe not. Talk through it. Tell them how you're thinking. It's very important to understand how you think when you're solving a problem. And the more you talk, the better it is. And you can get some useful feedback as well as you are talking through how you're solving this problem or how you're approaching the problem. Have a strategy, right? Like again, I keep repeating this, but it's the most important thing. Like, understand the problem, prepare a test case, make the problem a black box, define the method that you want, input, output, test it. You can't go wrong. Like doing those things properly is like probably half of the interview there. Like you do well on this, which this is something you can learn. You can there's no way you can not do this right. This is easy. But doing it properly shows and tells a lot about you. So do that. Like, practice that, do that, do not skip it. If you find yourself skipping any of this, and like, it's fine that when you're trying to write code, you're bringing stuff to console to like debug, printing messages, whatever. But in the end, I want to see like a method that I'm gonna call with whatever input we need, giving the right output, and hopefully tests that I can say, okay, now let's try it with an empty list, and let's see if it works with an empty list. Let's try it with this other input that I think might break, and you like do that in like 10 seconds instead of like spending like 5 minutes to do it. And again, make sure, this is the same. Make sure you understand the problem. Write tests. Start with a test case. And very important, have fun. Like, the person that's there is also like, they want to have fun. You should be having fun. You should be learning. You should enjoy talking about the problem and going through it and solving it together and asking questions. It's important. Like, at the end, it makes a huge difference whether this person is going to, again, answer, do I want this person on my team or not, depending on how fun the interview was. No matter what result you got to, like, getting to most efficient algorithm or not. Any questions? Again, this is my email and my Twitter. I would love to hear feedback. Feel free to email me with whatever you want to talk about. Or I would love to know how you guys do in interviews before and after this, or whatever you guys want to say. Any questions?
Something more specific to like competitive development jobs, like in Silicon Valley, or would this apply like in general?
Can you? Everybody.
Is this specific to Silicon Valley jobs for software development, or would that include, like, in general, all kinds of developer jobs, including like entry level?
This is, in my opinion, relevant to any good company. Not only Silicon Valley jobs, even though Silicon Valley is the most competitive, and yes, you're going to very likely be faced with this, but in any companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, they will all have some type of interview that's like this, but any good company that cares about the quality of people that they hire will do something like this, right? I personally, at my company, focus a lot on that, like, and it's like mostly spend time, like if I could, I would spend a week with anybody that wants to interview at our company, working with them, sitting down, pair programming, solving problems together. In a week, I would be able to for sure say, like, yes, I want this person to keep coming next week. They're very helpful. They know what they're doing. They're good, or not. But we can't do that. So, like, we try to simulate that in like an hour interview, and we try to do at least 2 or 3 of those. If like 2 or 3 people on the team say, yes, I want to work with this person, it's like a no-brainer, right? It's like, but if not, if people are on the fence, or if people are like, no, I don't, like, they don't communicate well, they seem pretty slow, they don't understand, they can't program at the level that we are programming yet, they don't write unit tests, whatever it is, very likely we're not going to hire that person. Any other questions?
So when we're practicing for algorithms, do you think we should be doing it on the whiteboard and in an IDE, or maybe just on the whiteboard, or?
It depends. It depends what company you want to work for. Like, try to learn about the interview process of the company you're interviewing for. If you're like trying your luck at Google, for example, yes, you have to practice. Like, they're not going to give you a computer. You're going to be writing code on the whiteboard. You have to keep in mind that a company like Google, everybody's applying there, right? So like, they don't care if you are very good and they failed you because you can't write code on the whiteboard. What they don't want is for somebody that's not good to get a job there. So they optimize for making sure that the people that are being hired are good no matter what. Some other companies don't have that luxury. So in my case, like, I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision no matter what. Like, I want to optimize for coming out with the best possible result for both people. Like, if I think you are the right person to join my team, I want to be sure of that at the end of the interview. And that's why doing the pair programming is the most valuable. Any other questions?
So at a lot of jobs on the whatever works, they will require some kind of like hard skill. For example, if it's experiencing .NET, C++, or C#, like specific languages. So how do you say it's a balance of those required skills compared with the algorithm solving problem?
So that's a trade-off that the companies make. I personally think that here's the deal, right? They're trying to hire somebody that will be up to speed and helping as fast as possible. A lot of companies don't have the luxury of hiring somebody and be like, hey, you're going to learn a new programming language. You have 2 or 3 months to do that. So they will say you have to know C#, whatever we use here, and preferably this framework and that framework, which really sucks because in the end, like, if you're hiring good people, people that are like computer scientists, that are good at programming, that really enjoy doing this type of things, they'll pick up anything. Like, you tell them you're going to, like we are at our company starting to migrate a little bit of our code from Java to Kotlin. I'm not going to find anybody who knows Kotlin. I want to find smart people that they will learn Kotlin and they will enjoy doing that while they can do other things. So companies have to make that trade-off. They will require that you know some languages. It's not the best in my opinion, but it's like there isn't much way around it if they want people to be up to speed fast, and they need people that are like next week or 2 weeks are going to be contributing a lot to production code. Any other questions?
What do you do if you come up with an algorithm that's like better than the like their algorithm in their head, but they don't like understand how you're explaining it?
So I'll tell you one thing. It's very, very rare that that's going to happen. Like most companies or most interviewers, they have done the same interview like hundreds of times. They have seen everything. Not gonna say that there won't be somebody that will come up with a different approach that will blow your mind away. It happens. But you mean like they're not understanding what you're saying? Maybe you don't want to work for that company. That's your turn to say like, maybe I don't want to be in this team, right? Like, because like it's another thing. Right? When we are working together, I don't care if you have 10 years of experience or you just graduated. I care about your ideas. If you have good ideas, I might not follow it. You might be doing like you might understand a problem better than I do. I will want to learn from you, and I should be able to, right? It's a requirement of my job to understand things that I don't understand or learn things that I don't know yet. So ideally, the person should recognize that they're not following and like try to understand. But again, at some point they're going to be like, you really want to do it this way? I don't fully understand it. Let's see you do it, right? And as long as you come up with a solution that works, you're going to blow their minds. It's going to be pretty good. But again, don't just come with a solution. Talk through it. Show that it works. Show that you have a good strategy, like you're following everything and you're writing your tests and everything, and you should do very well. Then it's, again, your option to join that company or not. Anything else?
I hear that conveying your personality is really important in an interview because, like you said, you want to work with someone that you like to work with.
Yes.
So, but you said that there's limited time in an interview. So, how do you suggest like conveying, like differentiating yourself outside of like code?
I mean, it's an hour, right? You have an hour there. You will convey a little bit of your personality. Like your personality is just not like how you talk to people, but how you approach the problem. Like how you explain what you're thinking, how you like deal with when you get stuck. There's a lot of interactions, like, and you should make sure the interactions are happening. Like, you get stuck and you're quiet, just thinking, it's an issue. Like never do that. Talk through it. Like tell them, listen, I'm really stuck here. I don't know how to get through this thing. They'll give you a hint, and like that feels much better to an interviewer than looking at you and you're like stuck staring, like this blank stare on the screen, and I don't know if I should help or not. And if I try to help, I might steer you away from your train of thought. So yeah, talk, communicate, and like hopefully in those last 5 minutes, you also like have a chance to like talk more. And if you like, most likely you don't need like, hopefully you don't need the whole 40 minutes to code. Like you finish your code in like 20 minutes, you'll have 25 minutes to talk, and then you can like do a lot there. Right? Thanks. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. And again, please. Yeah, I'd love to hear feedback from you guys. This is the first time I'm doing this presentation, so please reach out.